Ex-Inmates expose world's best prison meals. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. The first bite of freedom. The steak was overcooked, the fries limp with grease, but to Michael Reyes, it tasted like freedom. He sat in a small roadside diner just outside Huntsville, Texas, still wearing the loose gray sweatpants issued to him that morning when he signed his release papers. The waitress didn't know, and he didn't tell her. He only smiled when she asked if he wanted ketchup. It was his first real meal in 8 years, one he didn't have to earn with good behavior or trade with another inmate. As he chewed, his mind went back to the metallic trays, the smell of instant potatoes, and the one rule every inmate learned within hours of arriving: never complain about the food, because tomorrow it could be worse. Inside prison, food isn't just sustenance, it's currency, comfort, punishment, and sometimes the only thing that tells you what day of the week it is. The global contrast: meals behind bars. Across the world, the quality of prison food reflects a nation's attitude toward rehabilitation. In the United States, home to over 1.8 million inmates according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2024, prison meals often sit at the bottom of the global ranking. Budgets range from $2 to $3 per inmate per day, barely enough to meet nutritional standards. In contrast, Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, and Finland spend up to $15 per inmate per day, emphasizing dignity and reintegration. A 2023 comparative study by the University of Oslo found that food quality is directly correlated with post-release behavior. Prisons that feed their inmates decently tend to have lower rates of violence and recidivism. Michael didn't know any of that while serving his time at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's Estelle Unit. He only knew the rhythm of meals: 5 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 4:30 p.m., and the strange alchemy of turning powder, beans, and bread into something edible. America's harsh kitchens. Former inmates across the United States describe the same ritual: steel trays sliding across counters under fluorescent lights, ladles slapping scoops of mystery meat, instant oatmeal, and gravy so thick it could patch concrete. The Marshall Project, an investigative nonprofit, reviewed more than 250 prison food inspections and found that 1/3 of meals failed basic health standards, citing mold, rodent droppings, and nutrient deficiencies. In 2022, the Georgia Department of Corrections was sued after inmates reported finding maggots in their rice. In Michigan, prisoners went on hunger strike over portions so small they were losing weight at dangerous rates. When officials responded, they said the same thing: the meals meet state requirements. Michael remembered the worst day in the Estelle Unit kitchen. A batch of chili so rancid that even the guards refused to eat it. The inmates joked that chili day was the only time everyone agreed on something. No one touched their trays. He wasn't a violent man, but he learned quickly that food could spark fights faster than insults. Inmates gambled with packets of ramen, traded bread for cigarettes, and made spreads, communal concoctions of chips, tuna, and hot sauce mixed in plastic bags. The other side of the world, Norway's Halden prison. If the United States represents punishment, Norway represents reform. Halden Prison, located amid pine forests 2 hours south of Oslo, is often called the most humane prison on earth. According to BBC News, 2023, and the Norwegian Correctional Service, inmates there prepare their own meals using ingredients from a fully stocked communal kitchen. Each unit of 10 prisoners has a refrigerator, stove, and pantry. Their grocery allowance equals about $75 per week, and they can cook what they like: chicken stir-fry, lasagna, even fresh salmon. Halden's food program isn't luxury for luxury's sake. It's designed to replicate real life, to remind inmates how to shop, plan, and share. Guards and inmates often eat together, seated around the same table. Researchers from Cambridge University's Institute of Criminology found that Halden's meal-sharing approach reduced disciplinary infractions by 40%. For Michael, hearing about such places felt like fiction. "We don't even get salt," he once told a journalist after his release. In Norway, they get seasoning and conversation. Japan's regimented perfection. On the other side of the world, Japan's correctional system runs like clockwork. According to Japan's Ministry of Justice, inmates receive 3 precisely measured meals per day totaling around 2,600 calories, nutritionally balanced to the gram. Menus rotate every 4 weeks and include rice, grilled fish, miso soup, vegetables, and tea. The emphasis is discipline, but also health. A 2023 Tokyo University health study found that incarcerated individuals in Japan have a lower rate of diet-related illness than the general population. However, flavor is secondary to order. Inmates eat in silence, at identical speeds, under watchful eyes. Food is not punishment, but neither is it pleasure. Still, former inmates told NHK World that the meals are clean, predictable, and rarely spoiled, a rare stability in an otherwise rigid system. France and the culinary standard. In France, food remains a national pride, even in prison. At Maison d'Arrêt de Nanterre, near Paris, prisoners receive daily baguettes, cheese, fruit, and rotating dishes such as beef bourguignon or roasted chicken. A 2022 Sierra Leonean Lyons Monde investigation reported that the French prison service spends around €7 per inmate per day, and many facilities partner with culinary schools that train inmates in cooking. One former detainee told reporters, "It wasn't freedom, but the food made you feel human again." France's approach combines culture and rehabilitation, the belief that teaching people to cook gives them employable skills upon release. A pilot program in Marseille even placed inmates in Michelin star kitchens for internships under supervision. While critics accused the government of being too soft, results spoke for themselves. Participants in the culinary program had a recidivism rate under 20%, compared to the national average of 59%. Singapore, efficiency and order. Singapore's prisons operate on strict efficiency. Inmates receive standardized meals cooked in central kitchens and distributed across the island's facilities. According to the Straits Times, 2023, the daily menu includes rice, vegetables, chicken, and tofu, all meeting national health standards but with minimal seasoning. Food is viewed as a logistical necessity, not a comfort. Yet, unlike many Western prisons, Singapore's correctional system focuses heavily on reintegration programs, pairing simple meals with education and religious guidance. An ex-inmate quoted by Channel News Asia said, "You don't eat for taste, you eat for time. Every bite brings you closer to release." Unexpected luxury, Finland's open prisons. Among the world's most surprising examples sits Kirstenmäki Open Prison in Finland. Here, inmates live in small cottages with unlocked doors. They shop at local grocery stores and cook their own meals. Supervised but trusted, they are paid modest wages and encouraged to budget and eat healthily. According to Finland's Ministry of Justice, the goal is reintegration, not retribution. Prison Governor Jaakko Väisänen explained to Yle News. "If you treat a man like an animal, he behaves like one. If you treat him like a neighbor, he learns how to live among neighbors." Inmates prepare meals of fish, potatoes, berries, and bread, the same foods eaten by free Finns. Nutritional surveys show that the country's open prisons have the lowest rates of diet-related illness and violence in the European system. The UK's compromise. British prisons fall somewhere between austerity and aspiration. At HMP Wandsworth, one of London's oldest and most overcrowded prisons, meals are delivered on metal trolleys, baked beans, pie, and custard, repetitive but hot. Yet in newer facilities like HMP Berwyn in Wales, a reform-driven approach offers inmates a menu choice and access to supervised kitchens. In 2024, The Guardian reported that Berwyn's inmates could prepare meals in shared living units and eat together in groups, an experiment in normalizing behavior. Early data suggested fewer assaults and better hygiene outcomes. But public backlash was swift. "Criminals don't deserve choices," one tabloid headline read. Still, Berwyn's pilot program continued quietly, showing a truth few politicians admitted. The better the food, the calmer the prison. Back to Texas, the meaning of a meal. Michael pushed his plate away, half-eaten. Freedom, he realized, wasn't in the flavor, it was in the choice. He could leave the fries unfinished, order dessert, or walk out altogether. No guard would count his tray, no timer would buzz. He thought about the men still inside, the ones who said they'd trade months of good behavior for one home-cooked meal. He thought of the stories he'd read after his release, prisoners in Norway grilling salmon, in Finland baking bread, in Japan measuring miso portions by milligram. He wondered what it meant that the richest country on earth fed its prisoners worse than any of them. Then he smiled, folded his napkin, and whispered to himself, maybe that's why we keep coming back. Inside the kitchens, the secret economy of prison food. The clang of ladles, the hiss of steam, the smell of starch and sweat, for anyone who's done time, the kitchen is more than a workplace. It's the heart of the underground economy. Food is the first currency a man ever learns behind bars. The trade of survival. In Texas, Michael learned fast that a scoop of peanut butter was worth more than a phone call. Inmates called it spread gold. A small spoon could buy protection for the night or a favor from another block. The official commissary menu, chips, instant noodles, instant coffee, was the foundation of an entire marketplace that the administration never truly controlled. A 2019 Marshall Project survey of U.S. state prisons found that 4 out of 5 inmates used food items as money, replacing banned cigarettes after tobacco sales were outlawed. Ramen became the dollar bill of confinement, durable, portable, instantly valuable. A pack of noodles could buy a haircut, a letter delivery, or a weapon smuggled from the workshop. 2 packs could settle a debt, a case of 24 meant status. Former Illinois inmate Corey Barnes told NBC News that, "You could tell who ran the unit by whose soups got credit." The irony wasn't lost on Michael. A dish meant to feed the poor outside had become a symbol of power inside. The chefs of the block. Most prisons have 1 or 2 inmates who know how to turn scraps into miracles. At Estelle, it was a man they called Chef Rod. He'd worked in a barbecue joint before his sentence and knew how to season canned beans with ketchup packets and coffee grounds until they tasted like smoke. For birthdays or favors, he built spreads, crushed Doritos mixed with tuna, mayonnaise stolen from the staff fridge, and whatever spices could be smuggled from the chow hall. Across the country, this ritual repeats nightly. In New York's Rikers Island, commissary-based cooking is so common that inmates have invented hundreds of recipes, from cell tacos to prison burritos. Inmates interviewed for Vice magazine's 2022 report said cooking together was a rare act of trust. "You can't fake friendship when you're sharing your last soup," one wrote. But every kitchen carried risk. If guards caught an unauthorized spread, it meant contraband write-ups or loss of privileges. Still, no punishment stopped the practice. Food was the one thing that made the walls less real, Michael later said. You can lock a man's body, but not his appetite. Smuggling, seasoning, and power. Contraband wasn't just drugs or phones, it was salt, sugar, even butter. In many U.S. prisons, the meals arrive pre-plated from centralized kitchens, stripped of flavor for nutritional compliance. Inmates crave seasoning like oxygen. Guards with debts or sympathy slip packets of spice into laundry carts. Cooks hoard leftovers and trade them across wings. A Georgia Department of Corrections audit, 2023, found that more than $1 million in kitchen inventory disappeared annually, much of it resold internally for cigarettes or favors. Officials called it theft. Inmates called it survival economics. As Michael remembered, whoever controlled the pantry controlled the peace. Luxury behind the walls, when food becomes reform. In contrast, some nations use kitchens to rebuild character, not control it. In Denmark's state prison of East Jutland, inmates attend culinary school during their sentence, earning restaurant-level certification. According to European Commission reports, graduates have a recidivism rate below 15%, less than half the national average. At HMP Brixton in London, the Clink restaurant program lets vetted inmates cook for the public under supervision. Diners reserve tables months in advance. The kitchen follows Michelin-style standards. Dishes include roasted sea bass and handmade gnocchi. A 2023 Guardian investigation called it Britain's most successful rehabilitation experiment served on a plate. One former participant said, "The first time I saw people pay money for something I cooked, I remembered who I used to be." Asia's silent efficiency. In Japan, kitchen work is a privilege reserved for inmates with perfect records. The menu rotation, rice, fish, miso soup, and vegetables, is assembled with military precision. Yet even here, small underground trades flourish. A spoonful of sugar from the bakery can buy a pencil, a folded napkin can conceal a letter. Food moves faster than words, said a former Osaka inmate interviewed by NHK World. He described secret acts of kindness, an extra rice ball slipped into a tray for a sick man, or a slice of pickled radish passed through the bars on New Year's Eve. In the strictest system, compassion traveled by taste. The European philosophy. Scandinavian prisons turn the entire idea of a kitchen into therapy. At Norway's Halden prison, where every cell has a kitchenette, inmates plan weekly menus and eat alongside guards. According to the Norwegian Correctional Service, 2023, shared meals cut violence by nearly half. Finland's Kirstenmäki open prison takes it further. Prisoners grocery shop in town, cook family-style dinners, and wash dishes together. For researchers from the University of Helsinki, these routines rebuild a rhythm of life lost in confinement. Michael once saw photos of Halden's salmon dinners in a news article. "It looked like a hotel," he muttered. But later he admitted, "If we had food like that, maybe we'd act like human beings too." Food as punishment. In the United States, the flip side is stark. Several state systems, including Arizona and Michigan, have used what inmates call disciplinary loaves, dense bricks of blended beans, vegetables, and flour, as punishment for rule violations. According to court filings from the ACLU's 2017 case versus Michigan DOC, the loaf provided enough calories to survive but little taste or moisture. Inmates described it as edible cement. Some states banned it after human rights criticism, others quietly kept it. Even where the loaf is gone, deprivation remains. During lockdowns, meals shrink to cold sandwiches. In summer, milk spoils before delivery. In winter, trays freeze before they reach cells. For many, hunger becomes part of the sentence. Nutrition and neglect. Behind the economics and symbolism lies a health crisis. A 2024 CDC-affiliated study found that U.S. inmates suffer malnutrition-related illnesses at 3 times the national rate. Vitamin D and protein deficiencies are common, while cheap carbs inflate diabetes numbers. In low-income countries, the situation is worse. UNODC's Global Prison Report, 2023, documented that in parts of Africa and South Asia, inmates rely on family deliveries or bribes for basic nutrition. When families can't visit, starvation follows. In Kenya's Kamatai prison, human rights monitors recorded inmates sharing meals of thin porridge once per day. Compare that to Sweden's Sollentuna prison, where dinner might include chicken curry, fresh salad, and yogurt. Same world. Different justice. Why the food economy never dies. Every inmate eventually learns that food is more than calories, it's the closest thing to control. In environments built on deprivation, flavor equals freedom. Michael used to say, "A man will follow any rule if you feed him right." Guards understand this too. Peace often comes from the kitchen, not the warden's office. When the trays arrive hot, tempers cool. When they arrive late or empty, riots brew. A 2019 Texas state auditor's report quietly concluded that meal quality is a primary predictor of inmate behavior. Few outside read it, but everyone inside already knew. The psychology of taste behind bars. Researchers at John Jay College of Criminal Justice describe a phenomenon called gustatory deprivation, the dulling of taste perception caused by years of bland institutional food. Released inmates often report emotional reactions to flavor. Tears over a burger, panic at restaurant noise. Michael remembered crying over that first diner steak, though he couldn't say why. It wasn't the food, he said later. It was remembering that flavor meant choice. Psychologists link those moments to identity recovery. In prison, food defines hierarchy; outside, it restores individuality. When food reforms fail. Attempts to fix prison food in the U.S. have stumbled. Private contractors like Aramark Correctional Services promised savings but drew scandal after reports of spoiled meat and maggots in kitchens from 2015 to 2022, verified by state audit records in Ohio and Michigan. The contracts saved millions, the lawsuits cost more. By 2023, several states resumed state-run kitchens, but underfunding kept standards low. The same story repeated: too many inmates, too little budget, too few cooks. Meanwhile, reform advocates argue that improving meals is cheaper than rebuilding prisons. A pilot program in Colorado that introduced fresh vegetables from inmate-run gardens reduced healthcare costs by 22% within a year. Still, politics rarely rewards compassion for the incarcerated. A taste of freedom inside. Before release, Michael volunteered in the Estelle kitchen. The pay was 14 cents an hour, but it came with privileges: extra bread, a few minutes of silence before the rush. On good days, he'd sneak spices from the guard's stash and season the beans for everyone. "If I ever get out," he told himself, "I'll cook something that tastes like peace." Years later, he did. A simple chili, tomatoes, beef, real onions, not powder. He invited 2 friends from his old cell block, both trying to rebuild lives on the outside. They ate slowly, not talking much. When they finished, one whispered, "This don't taste like the joint." Michael smiled. That's the point. Food built his new life, just as it had shaped his old one. Behind bars, it bought survival; outside, it bought redemption. And somewhere between a spoon of instant noodles and a home-cooked meal lies the line between punishment and humanity. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. The last meal, when prison food defines freedom. The air inside Texas's Huntsville unit grows still before an execution. The walls hum faintly from the old air ducts, and even the guards lower their voices. In the kitchen, the stainless steel counters are spotless, except for one tray. On it sits the last meal a human being will ever eat. The ritual of the last meal. For decades, the last meal has fascinated and haunted the public imagination. It is the only moment in the machinery of punishment that seems personal, the state pausing, however briefly, to offer a man a final choice. The tradition dates back centuries. In medieval Europe, condemned prisoners were served bread and wine to make peace with God. In America, the custom evolved into a gesture of mercy, one final comfort before justice took its course. But even mercy has limits. In 2011, Texas abolished the last meal privilege after a notorious inmate ordered a feast: steak, fried okra, cheeseburgers, a pound of barbecue, and a pint of ice cream, then refused to eat it. Since then, condemned prisoners in Texas eat the same meal as everyone else that day. Equality through indifference, one former warden said. We stopped pretending kindness was part of the process. Menus of mortality. Records show striking contrasts across the world. In Florida, inmates still choose their final meal, up to $40 in value, purchased locally. In Japan, prisoners sentenced to death receive only traditional fare, rice, miso soup, and fish, identical to other inmates but served privately. The meal is simple, ritualistic, and silent. In Norway, where the death penalty was abolished decades ago, former correctional officer Anders Pornsen told BBC News that the idea itself feels medieval. Our goal is to make men live differently, not to decide how they die, he said. In contrast, the United States remains one of the few democracies that still ritualizes execution, and food remains its final theater. Michael Reyes, who spent years in the Estelle unit, recalled how inmates would whisper about what they'd order if their day ever came. Nobody said steak, he laughed. Everyone said breakfast. Bacon and pancakes. You want to die full of something you never got enough of. The psychology of the last meal. Psychologists call it culinary closure. A study from Cornell University, 2012, analyzing hundreds of death row meal records found that 2/3 of inmates ordered comfort food, fried chicken, ice cream, burgers, while 1/5 declined entirely. Dr. Brian Wansink, who led the study, wrote that the final meal serves as an assertion of control in an environment where every other choice is stripped away. Even refusing the meal is a kind of defiance, a final act of autonomy. Sociologists note another layer: cultural memory. Inmates often choose foods tied to childhood or family: cornbread, spaghetti, or peanut butter sandwiches. For many, it's the first time in years that food means more than calories. Behind the kitchen door. Inside the Huntsville kitchen, those preparing last meals are often inmates themselves, trained cooks under supervision. According to interviews compiled by the Marshall Project, 2020, many of these men describe the task as both an honor and a burden. One said, "You're feeding someone who won't see the sunrise. You don't mess that up." The cooks prepare with precision. Food arrives hot, portions exact, drinks chilled. Guards deliver it quietly, with no ceremony. The condemned eats alone. Sometimes he finishes. Sometimes he only stares. Then the tray returns to the kitchen, untouched or half-empty, and is discarded. No one speaks while washing it. Meals that mattered. History records famous final orders. John Wayne Gacy, Illinois, 1994: fried chicken, fries, and a pound of strawberries. Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma, 2001: 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Victor Feger, Iowa, 1963: a single olive with the pit still in it, he said it symbolized peace. Each choice tells a story. Some seek comfort, others symbolism. In one unconfirmed case in Louisiana, an inmate requested justice for a meal; he was served nothing. Across centuries, these choices became macabre reflections of humanity's hunger for meaning even in death. Food, once again, became language. From punishment to prevention. Yet the story of prison meals is not only about the condemned, it's about how nations define dignity. In Germany, prison menus mirror military rations: hearty, balanced, efficient. In France, inmates eat baguettes, cheese, and vegetables daily. In Sweden, dinner may include pasta or salmon, with coffee afterward. Their philosophy is clear: punishment is loss of liberty, not loss of humanity. By maintaining nutritional dignity, they hope to restore moral order, both inside and beyond prison walls. A 2024 European Prison Observatory report found that facilities with balanced, culturally respectful diets had 30% fewer violent incidents. It wasn't leniency that reduced aggression, it was nutrition. Food reform as justice reform. In 2025, a quiet revolution began across several U.S. states. California introduced the Reform Through Nourishment initiative, requiring that all state prisons include fresh produce from inmate-run gardens. In New York, the Rikers Nutrition Program partnered with local farmers to replace processed meat with real protein sources. Initial results surprised even skeptics: fewer fights, fewer medical emergencies, and, most notably, fewer complaints from guards. "It's not about kindness," said a warden from upstate New York. "It's about stability. You feed men properly, they behave like men." Meanwhile, in Norway's Halden prison, inmates still sit with guards at shared tables: no last meals, no hidden trades, no fear. The goal isn't erasing crime, it's ending the cycle that breeds it. The taste of freedom. When Michael Reyes finished his time, his first free meal wasn't extravagant: a burger, a soda, and silence. Years later, he began volunteering with a Texas nonprofit that delivers food to newly released inmates. "I watched guys freeze up in front of menus," he said. "They hadn't chosen anything in 10 years. Freedom tastes overwhelming." One of those men, a quiet kid named Andre, couldn't stop shaking when the waitress asked if he wanted his eggs scrambled or fried. He whispered, "I don't know." Michael told him, "It doesn't matter. You get to decide. That's what matters." Andre cried as the plate arrived: a simple breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast. It might as well have been a feast. Redemption served warm. In 2025, several European and American correctional systems began pilot projects linking culinary training with post-release employment. Inmates learn not only to cook but to budget, plan menus, and serve others. Programs in France, Denmark, and California now certify inmates as professional chefs before release. Many find jobs in restaurants that once would have barred them. Recidivism rates among graduates dropped by nearly 40%, according to combined data from UNODC and the European Justice Observatory, 2024 to 2025. As one instructor put it, "We don't just feed them. We teach them to feed others." What food teaches about freedom? The story of prison meals, from maggot-infested trays to salmon dinners, mirrors the story of justice itself. Some systems believe suffering redeems, others believe dignity reforms. Both claim to serve the public good, but only one truly nourishes it. When a nation decides how much to spend on feeding its prisoners, it reveals what it thinks about mercy. If food is the language of care, then the menu behind bars is a country's confession. The Last Supper, reimagined. Somewhere tonight, a kitchen in Texas prepares another tray under buzzing lights. Somewhere else, a man in Norway stirs a pot of stew beside a guard. Different worlds, same question: what does a meal mean to a man who has nothing left to lose, or everything left to learn? Food remains the final bridge between punishment and forgiveness. It is the first thing a man is denied, and the last thing he receives. And when freedom finally comes, one plate, one bite, one choice at a time, it reminds us that no matter how far a person has fallen, everyone hungers for a taste of humanity. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. Sources: Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2024, The Marshall Project, 2020, BBC News, 2023, European Prison Observatory, 2024, UNODC, 2024 to 2025, Cornell University Psychology of Food Study, 2012, Guardian, 2024, Reuters, 2023.